July 15, 2013. Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Buck and Joy, Jessie's parents, knew something was wrong when Jessie Blodgett walked into her house after a cast party. Jessie was usually a ball of energy, a gifted musician with a penchant for drama. She exuded joy and always had a bright smile on her face. Her shoulders were drooping that day. "Can you tell me what happened? Did something go wrong at the party?" inquired the parents. And, grudgingly, Jessie would say, "It's just that some of the older guys at the party were hitting on me. It's not a big deal." Jessie downplayed the mistreatment, but it was not an experience she could dismiss and sleep peacefully. These men were deliberately colliding with her, and one of them even pushed Jessie onto his lap. Jessie wrote the following words in her diary that night. "I believe that certain men are perverting what should be platonic love into a competition. I'm not helpless. I will recognize the issues and face them head-on." The final words of the entry are a true testament to Jessie's character strength. It's also why Jessie downplayed the incident in front of her parents. She didn't want to upset them, she wanted to take responsibility for it herself. Jessie reminded herself that she was surrounded by good people as she lay on the bed and pulled the blanket over her. Jessie had wonderful parents and friends who shared her passion for music, such as her friend Daniel. Being on the receiving end of flirtations was unpleasant, but Jessie's life in general was full of exciting possibilities. Jessie's only appointment the following day was a private music lesson at noon. As a result, when her parents left for work, they did not wake Jessie. She was on holiday, after all, and Buck and Joy both wanted her to get enough rest. However, when Joy returned home for lunch, Jessie had still not left her bedroom. Joy entered Jessie's room, concerned. When she opened the door to Jessie's room, she was met with the shock of her life, her daughter's motionless body. Joy dialed 911 while sobbing. "My daughter is blue, she is cold, she is cold, she is cold. Oh my God. Her trousers are soaked, and she has. It appears to be strangulation marks. I'm not sure what's going on." Those were, in fact, ligature marks. Jessie Blodgett, 19, had been strangled to death by someone. Jessie's life was cut short by an unknown assailant, despite a life full of promises. There is no alibi, but it was damp when Joy Blodgett discovered her daughter's lifeless body. Her clothes and hair were both damp. Detective Thickens, one of the case's early investigators, attributed the wetness to the murderer's attempt to stage the body. "I believe he washed her body, returned it to the bed, and covered her up," he said. But who wants Jessie dead? The arrow of suspicion pointed to a few people, none more prominent than the misbehaving men at the cast party. The officers looked into this possibility, and it turned out that one of those men had no strong alibi. This, however, was insufficient to link him to the murder. Furthermore, the tower location of this suspect's cell phone indicated that the device was in the vicinity of his home at the time of the murder. While the location of his cell phone was insufficient to rule him out as a suspect, no tangible evidence could be found against him. Jessie's diary entry indicated that he may have had a motive, but motives do not always lead to execution. And there was one question that had the officers stumped. The murder did not involve a break-in. So whoever killed Jessie had to be someone she knew. She had no intention of welcoming the misbehaving men into her home. 3 days before the killing, Melissa was walking her dog in a desolate park in Richfield, Wisconsin on July 12, 2013. Aside from Melissa's car, the only other vehicle in the parking lot was a blue minivan. Melissa noticed a man sitting inside the van with his feet dangling outside. A few moments later, this man exited the car, and Melissa heard serious footsteps approaching her from behind. She returned her gaze. The driver was the man. He was charging at her, his hands clenched around a knife. Melissa regretted allowing her dog to return to her vehicle, but she was determined not to give up. Melissa grabbed the blade and pushed it away from the stranger who tried to stab her. Melissa was wounded several times during the fight, but she fought bravely. When the attacker realized Melissa's mental fortitude and strength were too much for him, he dashed back to his minivan and fled the scene. Melissa needed 15 stitches to close 3 deep wounds caused by the man. She provided a detailed description of the attacker in the recovery room. White male, 18 to 20, light blonde hair, fair skin. The vehicle was a Dodge Caravan minivan. I'm not sure what brand it was, but it was old. Melissa's ability to recall several details about her attacker and his vehicle aided officers in quickly locating the van. But there was one problem: the owner of the minivan did not match Melissa's description. When the officers dug a little deeper, they discovered that the owner of the Dodge minivan had a son who matched Melissa's detailed description. The investigation team knew they'd found their suspect. The phone number of the son was discovered. The next step was to bring him in for questioning. One of the officers dialed the phone number of the mystery man. Buck and Joy Blodgett, Jessie Blodgett's parents, were hosting a vigil party. Everyone in attendance was overcome with emotion, and many of them burst into tears. Daniel, Jessie's music partner and former date, recalled the pleasant moments they shared that summer and the wonderful music they made together. Buck and Joy tried to smile as the weight of their daughter's absence crushed them from within. A phone rang in that room filled with memories and melancholy. The phone's owner quietly walked away from the others and pressed the answer button. Hello. Hello, am I speaking with Daniel Bartelt? Yes. Daniel Bartelt was the owner's son of a Dodge Caravan minivan. When Detective Clausing asked to speak with him, his response was okay. How many people get a call from a detective and don't ask, "What's going on?" the detective wondered after the phone call. "Why do I have to come over?" When the officers dialed Daniel Bartelt's number, they only had one question: would Melissa recognize Daniel as the man who attacked her in the parking lot? But the detectives couldn't have ignored Daniel's presence at a vigil for a woman who had been murdered just days before. As a result, Daniel would be asked a few questions about his relationship with Jessie in the interrogation room. And he was in denial about the attempted assault on Melissa. It didn't help Daniel's case that he had several cuts on his hand and couldn't explain how they happened. Daniel's defense eventually gave way, and he admitted to assaulting Melissa. He stated that he was overwhelmed by his life circumstances, such as losing his job and not having enough money, and that he wanted someone else to be scared about life as well. Melissa was simply the wrong person in the wrong place at the wrong time. Daniel would attack anyone in order to put them in a difficult situation in life. What reasoning? Was Daniel also involved in Jessie's murder? Daniel stated that he loved Jessie and would never harm her. Despite the fact that there was no evidence against Daniel in the Jessie murder, the detective investigating the Jessie murder was soon informed of Daniel's involvement in another crime. Daniel was a gifted musician and an excellent student who earned the respect of his peers and teachers. He dated Jessie for a while before they became friends again. It was difficult to imagine him as a man who would launch an attack on anyone, but his internet search history told a different story. Daniel appeared to be obsessed with murder, death, and serial killers. He spent hours watching snuff videos, which depict actual homicide. Daniel appeared to be particularly interested in serial killers who had a large number of female victims. Daniel was fixated on a pornographic snuff film in which a woman was tied up, assaulted, and strangled to death before attacking Melissa. He replayed it several times, and it made an impression on his mind. So, when he saw Melissa in the parking lot, he felt compelled to recreate scenes from his favorite porn, with Melissa as the target. He couldn't overcome Melissa's tenacity, as we saw, leaving him with an unresolved desire to exercise his pornographic instincts on someone else. By this point, he was convinced that an attempt on a random woman would result in his demise. So Daniel Bartelt, the man obsessed with pornographic snuff film, decided to go after someone who trusted him and would open doors for him. Jessie Blodgett is a woman. Daniel entered the house after Jessie's parents had left. He had a bag full of supplies, including zip ties, ligatures, alcohol wipes, ropes, and tapes. We don't know how he got in, whether Jessie opened the doors or he snuck in. However, once inside, Daniel pounced on her, put a gag in her mouth, and wrapped her head in tape to keep the gag in place. He tied the rest of Jessie's body and assaulted her because he knew she couldn't make a sound with the gag in their mouth. He strangled her to death once he was finished. Following that, the body was staged and the evidence was destroyed. Daniel cleaned her body with alcohol wipes, a technique he picked up from his favorite porn star. He then adjusted Jessie's posture to make her appear to be sleeping, draped a blanket over her, and quietly exited the house. Daniel put all of the tools in a bag and quietly left the house. He threw away his murder tools in a trash can, only to return the next day, sad-faced, to Jessie's vigil. In fact, he was the most articulate speaker in that small group of friends and relatives, pouring out emotional farewells to Jessie. Even in court, Daniel never admitted to his crimes. However, there was sufficient evidence to press charges. The murder tools he threw away in the trash can were recovered, and the rest of the tools, such as ropes and tapes, were discovered at his home. Despite his best efforts, Daniel had also left a roll of tape under Jessie's bedroom door. Daniel Bartelt received a life sentence without the possibility of parole for the first-degree intentional murder of Jessie Blodgett. Jessie, rest in peace. And thank you very much, Melissa. What are your feelings about Jessie's case? I really appreciate your feedback. Thank you for stopping by to watch. Subscribe now to become a member of the Chris Crime Diaries family.